Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. I want to welcome Angela Shanerman. I want you to know about her extensive experience within the medical community as the former program director and education coordinator for the New York University Medical Schools. Now, tell me if this is right, Angela. It's the Cytotechnology program?
Cytotechnology, yes.
Now, you went to Queens College in New York, and you had an advanced certificate. You got that in this cytotechnology from the American Society of Clinical Pathologists. Now, I'm going to tell you that Ms. Shanerman has been involved in many, many different things, and we're going to talk about it today because it's a very serious subject, and I think that the audience will be very interested in this. So I want to welcome to my show Angela Shanerman.
Thank you very much for having me, Susan.
You know, it's often, first of all, it's my pleasure to have you on the show, and I hope that in the future we can do this again because I know that there's so much information that you have to give our audience that they're going to want to listen to you. Now, let's talk a little bit about you. I want you to start by telling my audience how you got started in this particular, shall we call it, avenue of work. How did you get started first?
Well, originally, my degree is in biology, and I started working at the medical center and in the clinical lab part in cytopathology. And right away in my career excuse me, I got into training and helping others. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the clinical part, but I really enjoyed teaching and helping other people and really doing more education and management in my professional role. Mm-hmm. And, I worked there for 10 years, and the hospital situation, changed and things like that. I started my family. So there was always a need to help others, serve others, share what I know. And that's kind of how it evolved. And then I went through my own personal life challenges, mm-hmm. like everybody else, and you have to manage them and cope and raise a family and, have all the responsibilities of that. And then my own personal relationship took a turn in my marriage. Mm-hmm. And never would I have imagined that I would end up in a divorce situation.
Right. Angela, it's very interesting. I've talked about this with many of my guests, and I'm just wondering, is it the times that we're dealing with that they say that there are more than 50% of the population that are divorced? What do you attribute to that?
A lot of things. There's so many stresses, family, financial, career, really trying to balance all of it, taking care of elderly parents. Money and children are probably two areas that are topics of, conflict or, personal differences and things like that. And, everybody's doing the best we can with the resources we have at that moment in time. But, it gets to a point sometimes where you have to make decisions. Mm-hmm. Staying stuck is not healthy. It's not healthy emotionally. It's not healthy physically. It takes its toll. Stress, we know, takes an incredible toll on the body. And, prior to that, in my previous life, working with cancer and diagnosing disease with the slides, because we worked on the microscopic level, right. Almost like stress is like an emotional mm-hmm. Like disease-inflicting pain, in relationships.
But Angela, many years ago, and I'm not suggesting that there weren't people who were in marriage situations where there was abuse and they also got divorced, but somehow in this particular time, we seem to see an influx of people who are deciding that they don't want to be married anymore, and they just feel that it's okay to just drop everything. and their children are affected by it.
Sure.
And before, I mean, when you want to talk about stress, think about how hard people work then. I mean, what they were involved in. Very often, they made very little salaries. There was war, which there is now. Maybe that has an influence on all of this. But my question to you is that why now? Is it something to do with the way we relate to one another? Because everybody's on the cell phone, everybody's on their computer. There's no face-to-face kind of a situation. So, I just am absolutely astounded that we're living in a time where people think being married is not necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. There's probably so many factors, and, what starts out as a small problem exacerbates. People perhaps have difficulty in managing the emotions or looking at other options, or tend to kind of collapse. It's either like all or none, like that's it, I'm getting divorced, or that's it, I'm staying married, and then staying in an unhappy, unhealthy situation, whether there's abuse present or not. Sometimes you don't even realize the abuse dynamic, and that's been one of my areas of specialty. Not so much the physical violence, because that's outright, you can see that there's an impact there. But the emotional, the verbal, the financial can be very subtle and happen over time, where it gets very normalized, where your feelings are minimized. Somebody's telling you you're too sensitive, you can't take a joke. Little subtle things like that over time really kind of build emotionally inside of you.
Yeah.
And then the pressures of everyday life, finances, work, children, managing everything. We all have to look good. I was one of those people. Nobody knew what was going on inside my life. We looked really good on the surface, but I was in my own emotional war. And, then you have the legal system, too, because I thought divorce was going to settle it. Okay, we're not married anymore.
Right.
But that brought on a whole nother level of emotional struggle that I never anticipated and was very poorly prepared for. And that really has been the full circle of my mission in life, to support people, men, women, families. A relationship doesn't work, but there are other options. We can still co-parent. We can still make decisions and agreements in the best interest of our family and children if they're present, or, whatever the lifestyle is.
Now, I want to know, when people come into, say, you have an office and you give them this advice, tell me a story that you think was perhaps one of the most outstanding things that you ever encountered. There must have been something that really stood apart from other situations that you had.
Well, in my experience, a lot of my work is over the phone or through Skype. I don't need to see them face to face. In fact, we can create a very trusting, safe environment, because a lot of women especially come in really not knowing. They know something's not right, but they can't put their finger on it. Or otherwise, it's very embarrassing. It's very personal. They may have a lot of support with family and friends, but they still can't, nobody quite gets what they're saying. Or other people kind of just like, you should do this, you should do that.
Right.
So kind of like no matter what the situation is in their relationship, they kind of are all coming in with the same feeling. Something's not right. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Is this normal?
Right.
Yeah, you kind of feel like, you almost kind of feel like you're an alien in your head. Like, is this normal? Like, I'm doing all the right things. So, and it's kind of like, I've seen this pattern repeat in all different scenarios. It doesn't matter, how many kids or situations with money. So I in my findings, I kind of find that as a unique situation that arises with a lot of the clients that I work with this feeling of what's going on here. And then we really get to dig in and thread out and help them with their focus and managing their emotions. And I think the biggest thing, too, is we don't honor our emotions.
Now, explain that. We don't honor our emotions. Do you mean that we don't have control over our emotions, or that we do have a choice and we don't take it?
Well, I think sometimes we're pressured to what we should do and shouldn't do, and kind of have to put this immediate thing, like I need to know by Friday what I have to do, instead of, thinking about, and that's what coaching does, because coaching helps with your thinking level. It's not therapy. We're not rehashing the past. We're helping people manage the emotions and to honor them and say it's okay to feel that way, but what can we do? What actions can we take? Can we try on another way of thinking about something? Because we tend to collapse or see things as black and white when this is our life and this is our family. Mm-hmm. And these decisions impact not only us, but our children and our legacy.
Yeah, right.
That's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, that was an idea that I was thinking about, is that when people are divorced or they're in the process of getting a divorce, how does it affect their kids? Because, one of the things that I feel is really one of the reasons that divorce can sometimes be detrimental to a family is that kids, they want to have a mother, they want to have a father, they want a family, they want a community. And people, is it that they're a little also selfish? Because I know that if there's domestic violence or something of that nature, that's worse for the kids. But what about when kids just don't have a handle, don't even understand what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely impacts the children no matter what age they are. Some people, perhaps may feel that the kids are young and they don't know what's going on. But kids are very savvy, very wise, especially today's kids. And, they're seeing it in schools. They're seeing, one child perhaps spends the weekend here, or one child spends the weekend there, or they're flipping around. My children were probably the hardest years because it was through their teenage years. My divorce literally lasted over 5 years.
Wow.
And, I had to make a decision because the unhealthy environment that was going on in my household wasn't healthy for me. But what was I teaching my children? Yeah. About healthy relationships and behavior and boundaries and things like that. Children need a lot of support. I don't know if I want to use the word selfish, but parents are doing the best they can. It's very painful. It's a very hurtful time. This is somebody who you chose to marry. Mm-hmm. And for whether religion was involved or not, but a lot of, you made your decision based till death do us part, or, forever.
Right. That's also a pretty interesting thing for me. When I hear you talk about religion, how does that enter into the divorce situation? Do people become more religious, or do they become less religious because they say to themselves, why me? Why me? And do they turn to God? Do they turn to other people, for some kind of answer?
Yeah, I can only really speak for myself because it's such a personal decision. I am Roman Catholic. It was a very hard decision. I had taken vows. It's a sacrament, all these things. I really struggled with my own personal faith, but also I think it's a profound opportunity for growth. When you come to that awareness that you're not living a life that, for me personally, that God intended, that was true to myself, even if you take religion out of it, who are you at your core? Who are you? Are you compromising your values? Are you compromising your integrity by staying in a relationship or by modeling a relationship that's not healthy? I think it really takes deep self-reflection to go through that and say, this relationship doesn't work. I'm not a bad person. I did everything I could, right. Because if we could do more, why wouldn't we? So basically we're doing the best we can with the tools that we have at the time, and you really can't judge or blame yourself for what you didn't see then. Now it's time to learn the lesson. So I don't repeat things. I had to look at my own ownership in it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't be the victim that everything was done to me or blame somebody else. So it's a whole multifaceted spectrum of really reflecting on who you are and then what you want to create for your life. Some people have much better relationships when they're not married.
Yeah.
They could co-parent wonderfully. They could be there as a unit for the family because, again, the children are just a byproduct of this, thing that we call divorce. And unfortunately, it can be good people start doing bad things in divorce because it's so overwhelming.
I understand. Now, what about the fact that also it kind of nurtures big business? When you talk about lawyers, I'm not saying people who do what you do are taking advantage of the situation, but, when it comes to lawyers and other people who enter this process, I'll call it, they charge a fortune. I mean, you're talking about lawyers who sometimes get about $300 or $400 an hour. So is it in their best interest to get involved with people who want to get divorced? Absolutely.
And, lawyers command a very high fee. I mean, I'm in the New York area, so that's about right for anywhere from $300 to $400 an hour. I can't even imagine how many hours my case was over the 5 years, but I have heard stories of these astronomical amounts of money, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 by each party. That could be money for the family, for college, for a legacy. That was one of the areas in my personal journey that I was naive to. Because here in New York, the
law community,
sorry, the term just went out of my
out
of my head. But it changed to irreconcilable differences. So you didn't have to build grounds or whatever the past was. There's formulas. The law's kind of black and white. Anybody could look it up on their state website in their e-courts. But now you're dealing with finances. You're dealing with two parties that are hurt. One person may want to really stick it to the other person or not pay, or people can start doing things that may not be who they really are. Right. And as far as their integrity, if they're hiding money or dissipating money or things like that, it's a whole nother area of financial abuse that can happen within the parties. But also it's an expensive process because now you have lawyers that you have to, are charging you by the hour. And so when you're calling them because your emotions are all, you don't have clarity in your decision making and you're wavering and you don't feel confident and you feel hurt, you're actually going to spend more money.
Yeah.
And the lawyers have so much work to do. They need to do the law. A lot of times these professionals perhaps maybe aren't really equipped to handle with the emotional side of it. They know the law very well. Right. And you also might need a financial person. You might need a financial neutral. If you have business that needs to be evaluated, if you have property, homes, things like that, a lot of people aren't aware that they might need a neutral financial person to assist them in making a fair decision. The lawyers may not be fully equipped with that as well.
Is our judicial system operating on the idea that they want to be kind of neutral in the situation that they're dealing with when husband and wife come in and they say, we want to get a divorce? Does our judicial system help men or women more?
Well, I can only speak from my personal experience with the judicial system here in my state and what I experienced. My personal feeling was they don't want to get involved. You married each other, you have kids, work it out. Because if they're going to come down and make a decision, probably nobody's going to win, and it's going to cost a lot of time and drag it out. Unfortunately, sometimes the parties can't work it out. They're very attached to issues or circumstances or their beliefs. They might have a limiting belief about something, and compromise becomes really not possible. Or if there's an abusive dynamic where there's a power and control issue, that's not going to work either, where one party is kind of left with nothing and the other party walks away, with everything.
Right.
A lot of times women are put more in that position because of finances. If you've been a stay-at-home mom, you don't have the working history, the impact of, a husband may have worked in the workforce for 20, 30 years, and now you've been raising kids for 20, 30 years. And, and it's also very subjective because you don't know who you're going to get. You're dealing with a whole cocktail. You're dealing with yourself and your emotions with your attorney. You're dealing with your spouse who you're getting divorces from with his attorney. You're dealing with a judge. So you never know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
But I believe they want you to work it out, obviously, because it saves the court's time and money. It's very expensive getting everything on the record and all the court fees. But sometimes it's just not possible, and you're stuck in a system.
Yeah. There are organizations that you are part of, such as the NOW, which is the women's organization. Do you find that organizations that represent women are helping women to understand what to do when they're involved in such a situation as divorce?
Yes. My relationship with NOW is relatively new within the last year because I was reaching out for my own personal resources. There were none. I felt like there was nothing out there to really help me. And one of the things was their hotline tends to get a lot of calls, and there was really no resources or support to provide them to. So that's one of the newly formed committees that I decided to chair because it's very important to me here out on Long Island to help women in Nassau and Suffolk counties because there's very little resources. If you need a family, if there's areas of real violence and order of protections and things like that, the coalition and other organizations like that are very wonderful to support, those people in need for those circumstances. But if you're in a regular person, just in a regular divorce with all the overwhelm and there was very, at least in my opinion, little to none to help women. So that's one of the things that I'm developing in creating our panel and to really provide a good resource network for women or men too. Everybody needs support. Yeah. Women tend to reach out to family and friends and things like that. So, but for men too, and that's why the divorce coaching. It's almost like even if you're contemplating a situation such as divorce, you have all these things going on. You have your finances, your family, your property, your home, your career, your assets, everything, all inside a legal process. Why wouldn't you have somebody to? It's almost kind of even more risky to take all that and manage it all at once for one person to do. Yeah, I know. I felt it. The woman I interview and have worked with, it's a feeling of isolation sometimes because you have all these thoughts in your head and what went wrong and, you looked at differently and you looked as a failure or something. All these things we make up in our head. What about the kids? What about how am I going to survive? All these kind of things. You kind of need that sounding board, that thinking partner, and that's what coaching, that's what I'm here to provide. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to provide a safe, non-judgmental environment for you to sort through your emotions and then help get some clarity in your decision making. So I personally feel that this service can be a benefit to everybody, to the lawyers, to the financial neutrals, to the mediators, to the counselors, because we all have a niche specialty and we can work together in a collaborative environment. Yeah.
Angela, does the media have an influence on also how people deal with divorce? There are many movies, there are many TV shows that kind of make fun of it. They make it into, instead of it being a serious topic, sometimes they make it into like a comedy.
Oh, sure.
So, is there, in your opinion, does the media have an effect on the way people deal with divorce and the way people feel that it's an easy thing to do? I mean, because, they don't really touch on the fact that you have all these problems. Do you agree with me or not?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I mean, so, even in my own personal life, I had to make a joke out of it sometimes because what's the other side of that? You're upset and it's terrible. So sometimes you have to find the humor in it, but definitely the media, the television, I do believe that it kind of minimizes it and normalizes it. You think you get divorced now and you have this new life that just immediately starts, you know. But unless you have that may all happen. But I believe unless you have really worked on yourself, really healed, really had closure, you know, come to terms, come to ownership, then you're able to step forward and really create the life you want, not bring your past baggage and relationships into future relationships. And that doesn't have to be with a partner. That could be creating a wonderful relationship with your children. Right. You know, time goes so fast. My oldest now is 21.
You never believed that you would have a 21-year-old, right?
I would never believe it. Who are you? We just came home from college, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, he's going to be starting his own relationships and things like that. And we all come from our past, right? We're all a product of our upbringing and environment at the time, you know, good and bad. And you have to take the good with the bad and the bad with the good. That's who makes us who we are.
That's right.
But I think divorce really could be a very empowering process. You know, it doesn't have to be the doom and gloom. It certainly doesn't have to create the financial havoc and, you know, you know, bankruptcy and debts and all these kind of things that need to happen. You know, probably if you had stayed married, you probably wouldn't spend that much money redoing your kitchen.
Right.
But now in divorce, we're gonna, you know, play games here and, you know, have it turn into a, you know, who could be the last one standing.
That's right. Now, I want to finish on something. If you were able to develop a symposium on the issue of divorce, kind of shape it for me. I want to hear what you would do to create a situation where people can learn a lot and can be helped. So create a symposium for me right now.
Well, I think education is a lot of education and knowledge has a big part of it, and really getting to open your eyes. Sometimes you have to open your eyes into the relationship where you're in, and that doesn't mean it's bad or good. You just have to get honest with yourself. So I think that's the first step, knowing where you are. Then you could take the next steps and the actions of what you want to create, and then you could build the bridge to get you there. And also to educate yourself. You know, women tend to not know what's going on with the finances, not know what's going on with their credit, what they own, things like that. So I believe education is empowerment. And not that you know, just because you know about your finances doesn't mean you're going to get divorced. We need to be aware of these things. We need to take an active part. You know, especially if you are a woman that's in a power and control relationship. Sometimes you may have to do some remedial work on that. That doesn't mean to say you have to divorce, but learning how to set healthy boundaries, having open communication, listening. So I think sometimes we have to work on our own skills first because we always think it's the other person. Yeah. And really, we can't fix anybody else. We can only have control of our thoughts and our actions. And then you can decide, well, is this the person, you know, like what can you do what can you control in your own personal circumstances that has nothing to do with the other person changing?
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes people come around and sometimes they don't. But I think then you have the ability to make a more clarified decision whether to stay in this relationship or go, or otherwise accept, you know, I'm going to do the best I can right now in this moment. The kids are little, you know, without selling your soul to the relationship. So I think that's key, to really work on yourself, get empowered, understand the consequences of things so you don't do things out of spite or anger.
Yeah. Now, Angela, if people want to find out more about this whole issue of counseling, and if they want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
My website, it's www.angelashanerman, my name.com. I'm a certified divorce coach. They could reach me on Facebook and also via email, angela@angelashanerman.com. And they could always reach out through text or phone. I could provide that too if they shoot me an email.
That would be great. Now, do you intend to write a book about this or some sort of pamphlet? So
yes.
Let's hear about it.
Well, that's in the process. I have a couple series working on my own personal memoirs, and also for emotional abuse recovery and coercive control, and also dealing with a narcissistic relationship. So that'll be coming out within the next year. And I'm also collaborating with a colleague of mine who is a certified financial planner and CDFA, a certified divorce financial analyst, about money and issues and things like that. So we have a couple of things in the pipeline that will be coming out early next year.
That's great. Well, my guest today has been Angela Shanerman, who has extensive experience in divorce. It's also, it's a very important thing for people to understand what happens in divorce and how you can make it a more sensible way of dealing with divorce so that the children don't get hurt and everybody just has an amenable or
a workable relationship.
Yeah.
That works for all. That you can be, satisfied in your decision without resentment, and really have a workable relationship with your ex, with your children, even with extended family. That, for a lot of women or families, the family part is so important too. So my vision is workable relationships. You may not be able to be married, but we can at least be workable.
Well, I think Angela's covered it all right now, and I want to thank you again, Angela Shanerman, for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you so much. I totally appreciate your time, Susan. Anytime.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.